people sure do like to spin. You might not like Bill O'Reilly, but I like his concept of a no-spin zone. And I think we should use words the way the dictionary defines them. And everybody is guilty of trying to spin or slant or euphemize or frame an issue to lead to a foregone conclusion. And it drives me mad. And so here I'll be an equal opportunity offender. I can piss off the pro-abortion people and the anti-abortion people and the conservatives and the liberals because everybody does it. Everybody thinks their cause is so just that it's fair to spin or slant or distort. And here's one more unnecessary offense to the audience. I'm an animal rights guy. I love dogs and all that kind of stuff. But here's an offensive metaphor to use. I don't have a dog in this fight about abortion. I don't feel strongly about it. So I can see both sides trying to manipulate people in the middle. So, for example, anti-abortion tells you exactly what these people believe. They think we shouldn't do abortions. But instead they want to be called pro-life. Well, who's not pro-life? A lot of people are pro-life, but the anti-abortion people aren't necessarily pro-life, not otherwise specified. They might agree in capital punishment, or they might be carnivores and like to eat steaks, and they want the cows to get killed. It's a world of difference between pro-life and being anti-abortion. And the pro-abortion people are just as bad. They think abortion sounds kind of nasty. Who wants to be pro-abortion? So they're pro-choice. Well, who doesn't like choice? Everybody likes choice. But the pro-abortion people don't really mean choice not otherwise specified. They might not want you to have a choice to go to a gun show and buy an assault rifle. They just want the people to be able to have abortion. So call it pro-abortion, call it anti-abortion. And this kind of stuff goes on and on. Government revenue enhancement instead of taxes. Government investment instead of spending. Affirmative action instead of quotas. And this was big in Vietnam when I was dodging the draft, the preemptive reactive strike. So, well, it was really an attack, a preemptive reactive strike. They used that term, the military guys. And then I always kind of liked, this came out in the Gulf War, servicing a target with ordnance as opposed to bombing. You know, maybe it'd be better to say bombing. And one of my personal favorites is a long time ago, they changed the name of the Defense Department, or the War Department to the Defense Department. And then more recently, of course, in the Iran-Iraq War, we have enhanced interrogation techniques instead of torture. So let's all lay down our arms for spinning, and let's go to the dictionary. And I brought this definition from a book called Medical Meanings, because I always teach with etymology, so it gives you the etymology of words. And so I got this from Medical Meanings, 2nd edition. I didn't make it up. This is how vivisection is defined. Let's call a thing by its right name. Vivisection is the performance of experimental surgical procedures on living animals, especially in the pursuit of biomedical research, from the Latin vivare, to be alive, and secare, to cut. So we're talking about primate vivisection. And animal researchers, like all the rest of us, kind of like to make themselves sound as inoffensive as possible. So a lot of my vivisection colleagues will say we're biomedical researchers. Well, there's a lot of biomedical research that doesn't involve vivisection, so they're spinning. Or they'll say we're research neuroscientists. There's a lot of research neuroscientists like myself that don't vivisect. So let's just call it vivisection. And then is vivisection cruelty? Now, I'll run the risk of being offensive, but we'll go back to Noah Webster's dictionary. Seems like a fair, unbiased source. Noah Webster didn't have a dog in this fight either when he wrote the dictionary. So is vivisection cruelty? Well, the definition of cruelty is disposed to inflict pain or suffering. So it could even be psychological, but certainly it's physical. Causing or conductive to injury, grief. So that could be psychological or pain. So are vivisectors engaged in cruelty to animals? Are vivisectors engaged in torturing animals? And again, some people will say, oh, now you're using emotional language. You're being emotional and not rational. Well, I don't know how to be more rational than to go to the dictionary and check it out. So look at the definition of torture. So torture is anguish. That's basically really bad cruelty, or of mind or body agony. And I came across this while I was preparing these slides, the United Nations definition of torture, which I'm not saying applies to vivisectors. It comes close, but it drops off by one word. The United Nations talked about torture as an act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining information. So if you take out the person part, that's a pretty good definition of animal research. I mean, the animal researchers, I do not believe, the vivisectors, I do not believe are sadists. I believe they are doing this to get information. And they're willing to do it to get information. And it's kind of like that same question about, well, do the ends justify the means? I mean, when they were using enhanced interrogation techniques in Iran and Iraq, or waterboarding, they would say, well, we need to get this information to save American lives. And if you had a guy and you were sure he knew that a plane was going to hit the World Trade Center and you could get that information from him, you might say, go ahead and torture him, because you'd save 3,000 lives. Do the ends justify the means? On the other hand, these were just Joe Schmo Iranians or Iraqis or whatever they were that were in prison, and they were kind of torturing them to keep them in line. Maybe the ends don't justify the means. But I think that you could certainly say vivisection meets this definition, except that it's applied to an animal instead of to a person. So by definition, Noah Webster's definition, all vivisection is at least cruelty to animals, and some rises to the level of torturing animals. And if you want to contend that cruelty and torture are too strong to be accurate, ask yourself this question. If they were doing it to me, would I consider that I was being treated with cruelty? If they were doing it to me, would I consider I was being treated or tortured? And if the answer is yes, it would be cruelty to me or torture to me, then it's cruelty or torture to the other primates. Or so I believe. We should not shy away from brutal words if we are unwilling to shy away from brutal deeds. So I believe. I know some of the vivisectors, some of the animal researchers, biomedical researchers, are thinking that those are pretty strong words, pretty tough talk. How many people have seen the movie True Grit? I just saw True Grit. In the classic John Wayne version, there's this scene where the Duke is at one end of a valley, and he tells Ned Pepper, he says, I mean to kill you, Ned, or take you to Fort Smith, where you'll hang at Judge Parker's convenience. And Ned Pepper, who was played by Robert Duvall, goes, I call that pretty bold talk from a one-eyed fat man. So you might say, hey, cruelty, torture, I call that pretty bold talk for a skinny-ass Californian. So let me see if I can prove to you that this is cruelty or torture if you ask yourself the question, would it be cruelty or torture if it was done to me?